Hello everyone, welcome to another video. Today I want to talk to you about Samhain 2024. I want to talk to you about the main themes, the themes that we see coming back every single year. And I also want to challenge you a little bit and propose that we think about some connections between Samhain and festivals and events that are very, very similar energetically and are falling around on the same date in the whole world. So first on my list to discuss with you is actually the time frame and the time setting. Where does Samhain fall in the yearly cycle? And whereas I find that some of these seasonal portals we have here on Earth are rather short, I feel that Samhain is one of those festivals or one of those seasonal changes that actually has a really large time frame. So it falls really between two full moons. It falls between the first full moon after the full equinox, which actually starts the dark half of the year, which is actually really the start of the winter half year. Now, the first full moon after that, now this year, this fell around, I think it was around the 17th of October, until the full moon comes after that. The full moon we have in November. Now this year is at the 15th of November. Now in between those two full moons, we also had a new moon. Now the new moon of 2024 was on the 6th or the 7th of November. I will put the actual date here below. Now this is a rather large area. And we can look at this period of Samhain, we can look at it as the real start of the dark. The winter half year really has its starting point at the full equinox, yes, but it is around November that we really see a change in the amount of light. Now, you will notice that as soon as it gets the end of October and we're turning into November, suddenly it's dark all the time. Right, so we are really turning in the winter half. It's also the period of the year, you can actually see it a little bit here behind me, but all the leaves have gone. So October is a super beautiful month, and also around the full equinox we have autumn is in its fullest colors. It's showing us all the beauty of autumn is shown to us from September all the way into October. Even here it starts in August, right? And then once you get to November, like all the leaves are gone, right? It gets dark, it gets gray, it gets brown, it gets wet, it gets misty, it gets cloudy. So it's really like the depressing part of the year has begun. It's really like it's sinking you down, it's pressing you down a little bit. This is the energy you can feel around you. And November and this change of seasons we have here around the month of November, in between those two full moons, is really showing us the real start of the darkness. Now, we have some main themes energetically, what we are working with throughout this period of the year. And I'm going to try and go through them a little bit structurally, but all of these things are actually so interconnected that I'm probably it's difficult not to jump from one topic back to another topic and then back to the first one again, because everything is so like connected like a beautiful puzzle. And before I get a little bit deeper into the energetics of the period of Samhain, I just want to stress and mention what I'm pretty much mentioning in all of my videos that are about these seasonal portals, and that is that my expertise lies not in the historical accuracy and history of these events, right? So I am not really that particular about this place in Europe has this kind of history with this kind of festival, and this were its traditions. It has been traced back such and such and such. The pronunciation is exactly this. And then if we look at another place in Europe, oh no, it was actually celebrated one day before, and the traditions were more this and this and this, and it actually had this kind of name. You know, I am much more interested in how everything can actually be traced back together to the same underground stream of energy, and how everything is really interconnected, and how you can go to so many places, both within Europe and also larger to the rest of the world. How many of these similar themes, what's hanging in the air almost. We are working with so many of these same themes during particular times of the year, even though you're calling these festivals completely different things and the dates are not 100% line up, you know. So before we begin, I want to make this really clear, because if you are looking to more information about these very specific events and also historically where they're coming from, how they're still celebrated today, there are so many people online making videos about these topics. There's so many people writing blog posts. There's so much good information you can be found, and everything is so very valid. So please make sure that you are taking your information from a wide variety of sources, and also that you do your own thinking. Okay, let's get started. So one of the biggest themes of Samhain, and you can see it back in mostly Europe, the European history of this time frame of this festival of Samhain, and you can see it in its Celtic origin, in its Gaelic origin, but also we're going to talk about it later in its Nordic origin. And a big theme you can see coming back every single time is the theme of the fairies, the theme of the Fae folk, of the unseen world, unseen beings. Now, at this period of the year, this wonderful race of beings is on the move. And important to note here also is that Samhain is the energetic opposite of Beltane. Now, if you were watching more of my videos, or you're watching any other source or reading about it any other source, then you know around the period of Beltane that the fairies are coming out. The Fae folk is moving from its winter dwellings into the summer dwellings, and they are starting to live a little bit more among us. They're starting to live, we can interact with them so much more during this summer part of the year than we can during this winter part of the year. They become actually available to us. They are moving into a plane that is actually interactable with our plane. And at the period of Samhain, they are moving away again, right? We are 6 months later, and they are moving away, and they will be going away for the whole winter. That means that they are on the move. When you are on the move, it's a bit more difficult to stay hidden. It's a bit more difficult to stay on your end of the spectrum, right? They are actually moving through worlds, and by doing so, you can almost say that they are creating holes in the veil. They are piercing the veil. They are creating a very thin atmosphere, because so many of them will be moving through. So we say that the veil is thinnest around Samhain, but also around Beltane. These two are two very main festivals. These two periods of the year are very important in the whole history of farmers in Europe. You can also see it really clearly back in roaming farm animals. So they are roaming free usually in summertime. You can see this still in many places in Europe actually. I've experienced this myself, for example, when I was living in Iceland. You can still see it in large parts of Norway here as well, as far as I know, and probably around many places of Europe. It is around the 1st of May, this period around Beltane, that the animals are let loose. They are roaming free whole summertime, and it's around, I would actually, depending on how north you are, but between the full equinox and November, these animals are being brought back in. So we are really seeing very clearly where, even though we're not really at the equinox, we are a little bit further than the equinox. It's the darkness coming really in. It's a change in farmers' behavior and animals' behavior. And the veil is very thin, because this beautiful race of unseen beings, of Fae folk, are moving from summer into wintertime. And this really big theme of fairy can be actually seen back in traditions you find all over Europe. Now, if you are looking more to the western part of Europe, of the Celtic and the Gaelic world, you will hear stories about mischief. Because when the fairy and the fae is on the way, like I said, it's more difficult for them to stay hidden. And they are interacting with us a little bit more during this particular moment where they are moving. And if you know any story about fairy and fae folk and elves and whatnot, you will know that they are very mischievous beings. They are mostly good, but they're also very playful, and in their playfulness they can be extremely mischieving, and almost to a point that it's pestering, right? For us humans to protect us from this kind of behavior, for having bad interactions with the Fae folk, people would take precautions around Samhain. And they would, for example, they would dress up to confuse confuse your identity. You would wear your jacket inside down. You would like go about on the street, knock on other people's doors, go from houses to house, and actually create this kind of confusion to confuse the Fae folk for preventing negative interactions with those. And also, even here in the more Nordic world, and probably many people have heard about this blood, but it's called Álfablót. It's literally in the name. Alva, it's elves. If you translate it very roughly, it's elves because in the Norse mythology you have all these worlds, right? And some of these worlds are inhabited by dark elves, by good elves. You have all these kind of elves, and Álfablót is actually, blood is translated to it's a ritual. Some of the rituals that you found in the Nordic world with very public events, they would be done at important people's house, at the king's house, in very public areas. But some of these events, like Álfablót, was a little bit more of a private event. And not so much is known about what was actually happening back in history in this kind of rituals. We know from a few sources that they were done a little bit more behind closed doors for families, not so much in the public eye, but more every family or every community a little bit more for themselves. They would create these rituals, and they would honor also the elves, the Fae folk, and every subspecies of the Fae folk that you could imagine, both in the Celtic world and in the Nordic world. You have them. You have so many of these beings who are a little bit alike, but just not really alike. And I don't know, you had so many, like from little elves to troll, to angelic elf beings, to a whole range of those. And so even though we have not so many sources about what was really happening in the Nordic world during Álfablót, and also the date is a little bit like... It would be celebrated usually on a full moon, if we understand correctly what has been delivered from us from the past. It would be either the full moon of October or the full moon of November. And again, we are back here at this really wide, stretched out time frame of Samhain between those two full moons. And also this connection with, it's just in the name, like the Álfablót, and then so many traditions around elves and so many stories around elves and Fae folk coming a little bit more from the Gaelic world, right? So it's so interesting for me how everything is potentially, it can be traced back. But so now we have established that the veil is thin. The veil is getting pierced at many places. We have a lot of mystery and magic happening around us. Now, the veil is thin brings you once at another very important subject, and it is the subject of ancestry, ancestors, and honoring those who have died, who were part of your family line, honoring those who have died within your community. Now, also, this can be seen in Álfablót. This can also be really clearly seen current day traditions around Samhain, around the 1st of November. Again, history is a little bit unclear here, but it looks like most of the honoring the dead and ancestry can be traced back more to the Christianization of Europe, the Christianization of these events. But if you then at the same time look back at how the energetics is feeling, and you look back at how traditions were in the Nordic world, where Christianity came a little bit later, it's difficult not to think that honoring the ancestors and honoring dead people and thinned veil and access to the unseen world, access to the next world, is very natural, right? So even though maybe these traditions come a little bit more strongly in through Christianity, they're hitting the nail, right? So it doesn't mean because some traditions have a specific source that maybe we feel that, I don't really like that source, doesn't really mean it's bad either. Okay. Now you can also see this back, for example, in Mexico, Dia de los Muertos, if I pronounce it correctly, excuse my Spanish. And again, many of the traditions there are traced back to before Christianity in South America, but at the same time it can be argued that many of these honoring the dead traditions actually came from Europe by Christianity, right? Again, this video is not about the historics, it's more about the energetic of things. So we have a really nice opportunity here. We are working with the thin veil. We are not only working with the unseen world, but we're also working with the next world. Now, in the body, this will bring us actually to the crown, because what happens when you die, you will leave your body through the crown. Now, everything about thin veil and being able to communicate is actually the portal lies in your crown, right? So we are really working with this area of the body, which also gives you an opportunity if you're having any spiritual or meditation practice, focus, maybe do some things that are targeting your crown. Can be so potent this time of year. Because we are working with the crown, we are also at the same time working with awakening and enlightenment. And this is so interesting because we have just entered the most depressing part of the year. What we are basically celebrating is we are actually lighting the lights. What's happening when we honor the dead, right? We are lighting candles, we are lighting fires. So we are celebrating getting into the dark part of the year. And what we are really doing here is we are celebrating light over dark. We are celebrating awakening over confusion. And so very interesting. And now I'm going to challenge you even more. I'm going to stretch, I'm going to really stretch it thin for you here. See how you feel about it. But what about, how would you feel there being a connection between Samhain and Álfablót, but also Diwali? Again, excuse my pronunciation. Around, I think it was actually on the 1st of November, if I'm not really mistaken. This year, 2024, Diwali was celebrated around the 1st of November. And what they are really celebrating is one of the most important festivals. And what they were really celebrating was light over dark. It's the Feast of Lights, there's the Feast of Awakening. Light over dark, awakening over confusion. Now, isn't this connection that we have observed here from South America all the way to Asia, through Europe? Like, isn't this so fascinating? So it gives us so much opportunity to actually work with these themes in however which way feels good for you, in however which way is fitting your ancestry, is fitting your upbringing, is fitting your specific location in the world. It doesn't really matter where you come from, where you are living. You are accessing and you're working with the same energy together with the rest of the planet. And this is, especially now at Samhain, this period of the year, this is so unifying because you have actually come to a closing in the circle of the year, right? We are starting all the way in February with the awakening of the seed, the first stirrings of spring, and now we have come to Samhain where everything dies. The only thing that's in between is midwinter. We will talk about that later in time. So we really have come to a closing, to the end of a life cycle, and we are spiraling through this every single year again and again and again. All right, so we have this wonderful connection. Now, the last subject I would like to talk to you about a little bit is going a little bit deeper actually in subject of ancestry and ancestors. Now, even though you know or you don't know your ancestry, maybe you even don't know your parents, it doesn't really matter. Maybe you have traced back some of it, or you can be traced back all around the world. That's not really important right here. But what I want you to do at this point of the year, and we're coming to the end of a life cycle, we're actually almost celebrating dying ourselves, is doing a little bit of a life review. So I want you to look back at how I've been living my life, right? And very specifically in the theme of ancestry, can I look at the cards I have been dealt? What is my ancestry? Who are my ancestors? Where am I coming from? Where am I living today? And look at how you feel about these cards. You have been dealt several cards in life. Some of these cards we are very angry about. Some of these we are very grateful for. But look at the cards you have been dealt and then think about how have you been living with these cards? How have you been playing out your life? Have you been completely ignoring some of it? Have you been really fighting against some of it? And also at the same time, ask yourself these questions in regards to your ancestry. How do you feel? What is your relation with these ancestry? Or even what is your relationship with your parents and your own upbringing? Do some inner child work here. It is a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to go super deep into this very painful and uncomfortable subjects. And you can do some really transformative work, especially if you think about the crown and some spiritual practice you have going on around here. Another feeling that I feel is popping up is the feeling of grief and grieving, all the feelings that go around, some parts dying, and this grieving, you can actually almost grieve experiences you never had. right? You can grieve a childhood you never had. You can grieve a connection you never had. You can grieve certain parts of yourself that have died. You can grieve never experiencing certain parts of yourself. It's also a little bit betrayal. These are powerful feelings that might or might not come up for you this year. I really invite you to take a step back and try to observe it. Try to see, observe more of, actually you are dying and you're looking back at your life. So yes, you should feel everything very deeply, and yes, take the opportunity to really sit with those feelings, but also take the opportunity to just take a step back. Take a step back from yourself, really look at your cards, look at how you have playing your cards, look at how you are feeling about all these different feelings coming up, and also look at how you have been feeling about ancestry. And like I mentioned a little bit now before in the video, how also do you feel about there possibly being a connection between all these festivals around in Europe, but also the rest of the world? Does that trigger you in some way? Oh no, but you're mentioning Samhain, you have no right to talk about this. This is from my community. Maybe it's triggering this kind of feelings. So just hold an open mind. Open mind. We are here in the crown, awakening over confusion. Be kind. Always be kind. And work with the feelings of judgment, taking a step back. You're literally at Samhain, we are taking a step back. I'm going to end the video here with a small little ritual you can do, because I feel that these rituals, and even if you can call it these pagan rituals, all witches, all right, there is something very simple you can do. And it doesn't really have to be complicated at all. I sometimes look at everything you see online and written in books, and I think why? Why? It doesn't have to be so complicated. Now, a very lovely ritual you can do is, here outside in my garden, for example, I have a few these wind chimes, both made from bamboo and some from some materials. And you know what? The Fae folk and the fairy, they love that stuff. They love this kind of stuff that makes noises in the wind, that flickers and reflects the sunlight. A small ritual, take 5 minutes, say a thank you, and get those inside. Once we are getting to the period of May again, once we get to the seasonal change of Beltane, you can hang them back out as a welcoming to the fairies. But now we are saying goodbye to them, and as an honor, as a goodbye for them, take in all those wind catchers. A second small ritual you could do is, if you had going a Beltane fire and you have been collecting some of those ashes into a pot, go outside. Go to your favorite place in nature. Maybe you have a little place in a forest or in your garden where you feel close to nature. When you feel close to nature, there's probably some Fae folk around you in summertime. Take a little bit of the ash, say thank you, and give it to nature. It's so simple. It's so simple, but it's so powerful. All right, then I'm going to thank you for watching this video, for listening to me, and I hope to see you in my next one. Bye bye.